Hello, welcome to Go Beyond Betty. Today we're going to make shortbread. So shortbread is just a very simple cookie. It tends to be in one pan. You can cut it any way that you want to. And my favorite thing, aside from it tasting amazing, is it keeps forever. You can keep it in the pantry if you can keep your hands off of them. There's nothing in it to go bad, so it can last a long time, which is probably why it's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. So I like to make a single batch and a double batch, and I do them kind of for different reasons. So we're going to start with a single batch today. I'm just going to put it in, you can put it in any kind of pan, but I'm going to use a metal pan. You don't have to spray it or anything because it's made of a lot of butter. So it's only 3 ingredients, which is another thing I like. And I do use salted butter in all my baking stuff because I do like it to be salty. So in a single batch, we're just going to use at room temperature butter, a salted stick of butter, 3 tablespoons of sugar, and then 1 cup and 2 tablespoons of flour. So I'm going to cream together the sugar and the butter first, and then I'm going to slowly add the flour in, and then we'll press it in the pan. For the second batch, or the double batch, I will do the same thing, but I'm going to put it in a slightly larger one, and I'm going to use a rectangular shape because I'm going to show you some fun things that you can do with shortbread, whether it's more of a wedge slice or if you want to cut it into different squares and rectangles, because there's some fun stuff. So let's get started with a single batch. In with our sugar and 1 stick of butter. I've done this before just with my own brute strength, and you can totally do it for the single batch. You don't want melted butter. Melted butter changes the texture of the cookie, but it's really hard to do for the double batch, so I just got the mixer on. Whip it together. Single batch, I whipped it for maybe 30 seconds. You could do it longer. You can't over whip that, but you don't want to whip it when it's in with the flour for too long. We just want it nicely combined. You will have to stop halfway through, definitely scrape down the sides, because there's no other moisture in here besides that room temperature butter, so it takes a minute to combine. It doesn't necessarily look like dough, which can be a little unsettling. Oh, and you're like, that's not cookie dough. It really does. That butter will melt in the oven and completely be absorbed by the flour. So you can see it's already packing in there. Kind of like when you're making pie crust and you want it super crumbly before you kind of pack it up into some wrap and put it in the fridge. Same idea. So pack it in there really well. I'm just using the back of a spatula. And another thing that I do, you don't have to do this, but I do like to just give it the tiniest like sprinkle on top of sugar. Doesn't need it. And then I can definitely go in there, pat it around a little bit more. It is firmly in there. I know, it's scary. How's that gonna be a cookie? It will. Let's do the double batch. I'm gonna use about 5 tablespoons of sugar and 2 sticks of butter. There's something about whenever I dump like a bunch of sugar, it always smells like, it reminds me of being a kid and making Kool-Aid. And there's that dust cloud of sugar. And sometimes that like dust cloud tastes like, I don't know, whatever flavor it was. But for the most part, it's just the sugar that's like, oh, all of a sudden, sweetness. It's lovely. All right, whip it. Whip it. Butter and sugar are combined. And now we're gonna add 2 cups plus a 1/4 cup of flour.
So 2 1/4 cups?
2 1/4 cup of flour. I think for a minute, I keep changing it.
Do it in fractions.
No, God. Math. 9 1/4 cups.
9/4.
Not my strong suit. All right, batch number 2 is done. The double batch, again, it doesn't look like dough, but it's gonna look like really wet sand or like, almost like almond flour, but once it bakes together, ooh, I don't know if you remember this thing. I'm mostly talking to you, love. I made it in college, and it was like my super guilty pleasure. It's a can of cherry pie filling and a can of crushed pineapple, and then on top you put a cake mix, white cake mix, and then you melt a stick of butter on top. So it's like completely dry cake mix, but then you just add that butter on top, and guess what? After you bake it, it's like a perfect crumble topping.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called dump cake. Wonder why.
Did you get dumped a lot for making that cake?
No, didn't get dumped. I must have been one of those pretty girls that just didn't get asked out. That's all I could figure.
It's intimidating to talk to pretty girls like you.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pack it down. I don't care as much about them being really pretty on top because I'm gonna be doing something with them. Have I enticed you enough? I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. This is the thought I had today. So I watch TikTok. I'm one of those people. Say what you will. I love TikTok. I learn a lot on there. Anywho, I saw this chick the other day, and she was making like a Snickers, a homemade Snickers. She opened up a date, took the pit out, put peanut butter inside. I don't know why peanut butter, because that is not Snickers. Anywho, then closed it up, dipped it in chocolate, sprinkled it with nuts. So then I thought, what if I have dates and I can melt chocolate? What if I put a little rectangular piece of shortbread in there, have a date, dip it in chocolate, and it's like a Twix bar. That's what we're gonna try. You can sprinkle the top with sugar if you want to. I still just have it here. Doesn't need it. I kind of do that and then shimmy it around so it kind of disperses. But she's nice and packed in there. I think because it's also a pretty dry dough, that adds to that really flaky crumbliness of it. So fear not, friends. In the oven it goes. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Some people bake it lower. I don't really bake anything under 350. I want it done. Okay, so our single batch is out. Notice that all around the edges, it's lightly brown. You don't want it any darker than this. And you do have to cut it right away. And I tend to use just like a pizza wheel. I find that it just makes me a little bit more accurate. Oh, geez, I already messed it up. Shin, don't talk. Sorry. Not perfect, but that's okay. And then with all the little edges, I just go in with a knife and just make sure I get it. Don't remove these. Give them at least 10 minutes just staying in here and cooling. But if you don't cut it right away, it'll crumble. So you gotta get this done within the first minute of it coming out. All right, our double batch is out of the oven. So I want to cut these into kind of like a rectangle. And as I said with the single batch, you want to cut them immediately, otherwise they won't cut. Tom, I should have you cut things. I'm not as precise. Wonder why that is.
Got some theories.
Why do you think?
I don't know.
Well, all the ones that aren't perfect, then I get to eat those ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I save all the really nice ones for people. All right. Almost done scoring these. So I'm just catching the edges. So you don't want to take these out right away. While our batches are cooling, I'm going to melt some chocolate. Now you can melt chocolate many different ways. If you really want to be precise, you want the outside to be hard and glossy and perfect, that's called tempering, and that is a very precise, kind of difficult thing to do, and it takes some practice. I've done it before, but that's not really what I care about today. I think these are just gonna like literally go down the gullet, you know, some people are gonna have them tonight and that's it. So I'm not so concerned about that. So I'm just gonna melt them in the microwave. I'm gonna use 60% dark chocolate, put them in here. I think it's gonna be easier for me to dip them around and get them onto some parchment in something shallow versus a deep bowl. But I'm just gonna microwave this, normal heat, but every 10 seconds, I'm gonna check it. And as soon as it's thoroughly melted, we don't want it hot. Because actually chocolate, you don't want much over your body temperature. If it gets too hot, then it's not gonna be good anymore. So we wanna just barely get it to melted, and then we're gonna roll these guys around. Check that chocolate every 10 seconds, give it a stir. It probably is only gonna take, depending on how much you put in there, 45 seconds or so. It goes really quickly. So we took out some of our little wedges. You can do maybe one side, you could do both sides, and then if you want to get crazy, you can dip it in some nuts. I have some dehydrated strawberries or raspberries after the chocolate. You could use white chocolate. Come on over, look at these. I don't happen to have any white chocolate. I think that would be pretty, but hey, who doesn't like chocolate and raspberry together? Oh, son of a biscuit. See, that
Well, you
one's
might as well
mine.
taste it. Yeah.
That one's mine.
Or don't.
Let's try that again. Is there any cuter of a little snack than a cup of tea and your tiny little shortbread biscuit? It's so buttery and flaky. Not crazy sweet. It just has a little bit of light sweetness. Oh my gosh. I always find it to be like one of those things, like you start to eat it and you're like, oh, that's good. And then when you're done chewing on it, you're like, I have to have a lot more. They're so good. So thank you for joining me at Go Beyond Betty, where you are taking risks in the kitchen. We'll catch you again next time. Bye.